Hey, it's Alex, the co-founder of Omniscient Digital. I have a quick message for you. I'm super stoked about the speakers that we booked for our upcoming office hours. So if you're not familiar, Office Hours is our virtual event series where we hand select the best experts that we know in content marketing and SEO, and generally marketing, and we give them 20 minutes to give a practical talk, tactical hands-on stuff for our audience, plus 10 minutes of Q&A, which is always fun. So on March 16th, this is our next event. We do this every 2 months. We're going to be joined by Michael Keenan, the co-founder at Peak Freelance. He's going to be talking about the freelance writing trends of 2022 and how to act on them. Adrienne Barnes, the founder of Best Buyer Persona, and she's going to be talking about how to create a buyer persona you'll actually use. She's got some contrarian opinions on buyer personas that I love. And Emma Samasco, and she's the founder of Stories by Us. And she's going to be talking about how to use compelling case studies to sell your stuff. So we've learned a bunch from all these speakers. You might notice they've been podcast guests in the past. And basically, I mean, we've stolen how we do buyer personas from Adrienne. We've stolen how we do case studies from Emma. So this office hours is going to give you the same chance to basically see, behind the curtain and how they do what they do. The podcast is a great way for us to explore these things at kind of a higher level and go into the why, the why behind why buyer personas are, not effective all the time, and how Adrienne in particular does them differently. But office hours actually shows you the what. It pulls the curtain back and shows you their process. So these are things you can actually use and apply to your jobs in daily life. Here is a quick bite from each speaker giving you a preview of what they're going to talk about.
Hi, I'm Adrienne, the founder of Best Buyer Persona, and I'm really excited to join Omniscient Digital's office hours on March 16th. We are going to be talking about how to create a buyer persona that you'll actually use. We're not talking about Mary Marketer and like the check the box, fill in the blank type of buyer persona. None of that here. We are going to dive deep into how to create buyer personas that you can use on marketing campaigns, on copy, for content, even product and feature development. Really something that you can utilize in your business that will actually help to make sound and logical decisions to move everything forward and to actually market to the people that want to buy your product. So we're going to be talking about how to create buyer personas, and I hope to see you there.
The freelance writing world moves at the speed of light and is growing fast. It's estimated there are over 204 million freelance writers today in the world. Keeping up with all the changes is not easy, but in order to stay competitive, you gotta stay ahead. So join me, Michael Keenan, freelance writer and co-founder of Peak Freelance, for office hours on March 16th to talk about the upcoming freelance writing trends for 2022 and how you can stay competitive in your field.
Hi, I'm Emma Samasco, founder of Stories by Us. I am a content marketing consultant that specializes in case studies. So I help companies, especially software companies, create case studies that feature their absolute best client stories. I interview their customers and put case studies together. I help my clients through the whole process, and I'm going to be sharing some of my insights and findings with you. And I can't wait to hear about your experiences with case studies, offer my own insights, and see what we can find out together.
All right, so join us Wednesday, March 16th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can go to the website. It's beomniscient.com/office-hours, or just go to our site. You'll see office hours on the nav bar. You can register by clicking the link in the description as well. And I'd encourage you to register even if you're not sure you can make the live event, which I do this all the time. I sign up for webinars and I can't attend that day, but it's great because you get the recording anyway. And we're going to send you the recording. We'll also send key takeaways and any resources that they give us, such as slides or spreadsheets or templates. So I hope to see you there. Hello. This is Alex Burkett, and you are listening to the Long Game Podcast. This episode is part of our Kitchen Side series, where we pull back the curtain and show you the behind-the-scenes conversations, debates, strategies, and brainstorm sessions that we have at our agency. This was one of my favorite episodes we've ever done. My co-founders, Allie and David, and myself talk about our career paths and how we grew into this place as co-founders of Omniscient Digital. We talk about career regrets and imagine what we want our legacies to be in the future. We also talk in detail about jobs that we've had and how we landed at those places, and also what we learned. Many common themes emerged, really interesting stuff like career anxiety and insecurities early on, as well as the pivotal role of mentors that we've had in our growth. I think you're going to enjoy this episode and probably get to know much more about me, David, and Allie. So without further ado, here is the Long Game Podcast.
So this is another episode of Kitchen Side, where we take you behind the scenes of our agency. And today we're diving into the founders' backgrounds, their career journeys, and how they ended up in content marketing. So Alex, let's start with you. You majored in broadcast journalism.
No,
is that right?
That's totally wrong.
Journalism, not
journalism,
broadcast.
Yeah. So it wasn't technically journalism, actually, and that's confusing because it was housed in the journalism school. So I had to take a couple credits on the J school side, just like 2 or 3 foundational classes. But I actually majored in strategic communications, which was is basically advertising. So there was a separate comms department. It wasn't in that. It was really to kind of set you up for the agency pipeline to join like an advertising agency. So most of my classes were around persuasive advertising and communications, advertising history. We had one whole kind of like, it wasn't like discussion based. It was like project based class where we actually got put into micropods where there was like an account manager, an account planner, like an analyst and all that stuff. And we actually like worked directly with a real client. We had Land's End come in and actually built a campaign for them.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
So for all intents and purposes, I studied advertising and took a couple J school classes. And the journalism classes I ended up using, I think, a lot more in my day-to-day. Taught me how to communicate using the inverted pyramid of, putting the most important facts first and always asking why and asking good questions. I don't know at the time what I was interested in, though. So that just kind of combined my love of business and comms. So at one time I wanted to be actually wanted to go into the music business, but that's totally unrelated. I wanted to be an English major, but I also loved business. So I wanted to combine those in some way. So I wanted to get into tech. I joined an early stage startup out of college, pre-seed. It was called Lawn Starter. Still around, still super successful, still great friends with them. I actually just jammed with Ryan from Lawn Starter last night, played some pop punk covers on the side. And it was scrappy. It was early stage. We're sitting around the table trying to, build an MVP and get basic traction channels in place. So I did a little bit of content and SEO there. It was quite different in terms of our aims. Like we were a consumer company, so we were doing a lot of like digital PR, building like ego bait listicles, the top landscaped colleges, trying to get links from .gov and .edu sites just to try to build up a domain rating. So I learned
Did you do some scholarships
there? We did a scholarship. I think they still do a scholarship. It works like a charm.
Yeah.
I scraped a whole list of like college, I think admissions people and like their emails.
Yeah,
and like I mass
too.
emailed everybody.
I
learned a ton there.
Maybe we should do a scholarship.
For sure. I did it at CXL too, actually. And I think they still do it there. But yeah, anyway, so that was very well-rounded. Like I learned a little bit of everything from like cold calling all the way down to customer support. And then I joined CXL after that. I was freelancing like a lot during that time too. I kind of kept a freelance side of my life open for many years. CXL was like data-driven graduate school for me. So if no one's familiar, I mean, you guys are, but like the audience, it's a conversion rate optimization agency. That's how they started. So I joined and was basically doing content and growth to try to get more leads for the agency. And the blog was the biggest channel. So I basically learned growth through blogging and through content marketing, just because that was the channel of sorts there. Through that,
You've described Pep as your mentor in a way, right?
Yeah, I definitely look up to Pep and still, communicate with him all the time. He's framed a lot of how I look at business and life balance. I think he's done that really well. And also he's like very demanding of himself and others with his bar for excellence. Like he expects a lot, but I think that led me to be a better marketer during that time and a better person. Yeah, I learned a shitload. Like I've never learned more in my career than at CXL. Did everything from Google Tag Manager implementations to A/B tests to product marketing. Like it was insane, like the scope that I had and kind of the freedom and autonomy there. Went to HubSpot after that, where I worked on like acquisition, and it was this very, very kind of vague, we're going to freemium, we're shifting down to like this low touch model where people can sign up for free products. How do we acquire users for that? So I basically would build out playbooks from 0 to 1 to try to find acquisition channels that would be conducive to freemium, and a little bit of product management at the end. In the last 6 months I was there. And then, when did we launch the agency? Like 3 years ago. So that was like while we were at HubSpot.
Yeah.
So you guys met at HubSpot, all of you, right?
We
Just
all
want to
met
make
at
that
HubSpot,
clear.
yeah. So David and I, we were on the same team, I think. Or no, we weren't on the same team when we first started, but we were both on acquisition and growth. And then we were on the same team for a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
And
Tell the audience how you started talking. Did someone ask someone a question and you're like, we're going to be friends?
No, so we didn't start talking.
Yeah,
that
was not
how
the
we
first,
became
like,
friends.
That wasn't your first interaction?
No, the first.
No, we actually did a group trip, right? Like
the
to
first
Maine.
time we hung out was like a group trip to Maine. I think before Inbound.
Yes, and that was the first week that I had joined.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anybody. So I met a bunch of people on that trip, and then basically, I think it was like 6 or 7 months later when we were on the same team. We were at marketing kickoff, and it's like 8 a.m. I'm groggy. I've got a cup of coffee, and David saddles up to me, and he's like, "Hey, man, do you believe in free will?" And thus was born an amazing
The rest is
friendship.
history.
I was definitely reading a lot of philosophy at that time.
So just my type of conversation, and that's basically the career up until this point. There's a lot of like little splotches and freelance stuff. Like I was doing a lot of CRO, conversion rate optimization stuff, and content and growth, but I don't do that anymore. It's now fully plowing into the agency and building this.
Very cool. So like looking back, like they say you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can connect them looking back. Do you see why you ended up doing what you're doing? Like, does all of it make sense now? Whereas in your early 20s, I guess you're not sure what you want to do. You're not sure where you're headed, or was it always clear to you?
It does and it doesn't. I think if I look back to like my early childhood, like I was always the kid doing like lemonade stands, and like I built a t-shirt store when I was in middle school, and even like when I was in a band in high school, I treated it like a business. So I've always loved this entrepreneurship thing. So I think my grand vision and mission has always been to build businesses and just like build things. There's been like veering from that path, and I've caught like the shiny object syndrome, or like gone after the carrot in front of me instead of doing that sometimes. But I think that's always been present. And even in the work that I've chosen through my various career, like my jobs, like I've always picked things that are relatively open-ended and are like solving big problems with uncertain solutions. Writing has always been a throughput through this. Like that's the through line through this. It's always something that I've kind of like maintained, and data analysis. So like there have been patterns. I can't say that I've been very strategic thinking out like what's my 5-year plan and like where do I want to go next? Because every opportunity has come relatively serendipitously, because I've been pretty open with regards to like how I network and how I like build opportunities for myself. Like I never sat down and I was like, I want to work for a public company in MarTech. Like I didn't want to go work for HubSpot. Like it just kind of came because, I actually freelanced for them way back in the day. And I kind of got back in touch with Scott Tousley, who was like, hey, we're hiring for this role. And it happened at that time that I was looking for something different. So it's been, I'm not huge into like planning every step out.
Yeah. Well, you build relationships pretty easily. So I feel like that has helped you a lot.
For sure. That's
Definitely
been one of the
in your
biggest
favor.
strengths, 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's go on to Allie. You have a bachelor's in marketing, and you also studied economics and business. So why did you make that choice?
Yeah, I started my college career undecided, which felt like the ultimate failure. Looking back now, it was literally so just not anything important. But I remember 18-year-old me was like, God, I can't figure my whole life out right now. But if that's not like commentary on how much pressure I put on myself, I don't know what is. So at 18, I was undecided. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my parents own a few businesses, and I was a part of them since I was a kid, like running the register and all of that. So I always had a penchant for like operations and business type problems. Like that's what excited me. But I also always loved writing. Like I was the kid at 9 years old that they're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, be a writer, but I didn't really know what that meant. I was always writing short stories. Didn't really make a lot of sense. Every time my family wanted to like send greeting cards, they just gave them to me to like write it out. But I chose economics as a sophomore because I just thought it was fascinating. Like, I really like econ. I like talking about it. I think everyone should know about it anyway. But by the time I became a senior, I was like, I don't want to be an analyst. Like, I remember getting into like my 300s and 400s classes and being like, this is my future. And it just wasn't like that type of work that I wanted to do. So I had to stay within like the college of business, you know how that goes, or you like mess up your whole path. And I was a scholarship kid, so I had to be out in 4 years and all of that. So I switched to marketing, and it wasn't because I was like ultimately very passionate about it. It came easy to me. It was interesting to me, but it was also kind of just a way to wrap things up while still kind of pursuing a more creative path. Cause like Alex, I was always curious about English, but being the logical person I am, I was like, I can't get a job with an English degree, that whole saga. So I was like, I'm just going to wrap this up, finish up. When I was a junior, I interned at GE, which is like Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown's biggest employer. It ran in my family, and a lot of people I knew worked there. So I was working on a product team, just kind of it was an internship. So when I graduated, I went into a full-time role that they had created for me. It was actually recruitment marketing. At the time, like, you don't know what you like are doing, really. It's just like a job, unless you're like an accountant or something that has like a very clear path. Like Alex's story, it just kind of like, sometimes it just happens and you just make the best of it, or you have a general idea of how you want to spend your time, but that doesn't really always map to a titled role. So I spent about 6 months in this job, and it wasn't for me. And the whole writing thing continued to like push on me. And I was like, gosh, I'd love to spend more of my time writing. So like in my job, the writing aspects were always my favorite. But I knew like buckling down for the 25-year career at GE, like that just wasn't me. It was just a means to, have an income and create relationships and all of that stuff. And at the time, like remote work and all of that was not really talked about. But I remember sitting in my little cubicle, like basically reading Forbes, Entrepreneur, like all these magazines and internet like publications and everything that I really liked. And I kept seeing the name Kaylee Moore. And I was like, gosh, I wonder how she makes money writing. Like, I would love to be writing about business. Because at the time I decided, like, I enjoy marketing, I enjoy business. Like, I like this. I don't know if I want to be doing it, but I really would like to be writing about it. Didn't know at the time, they're literally the same thing. Like, writing about business and marketing is still the act of marketing. And I ended up just like quitting my job on my own on a whim around the 6-month mark. Was probably the most like reckless thing I've ever done. It was very out of character for me, like pissed my dad off, like all that stuff. I was on my own, but like my parents, we were so close.
Such a rebel.
Yeah. Again. Yeah. So I started like freelancing a little bit. I was Kaylee's first coaching client. And the only reason I loop her into the story was because that was like a huge turning point for me. She helped like give a lot of structure, and she helped me view being a freelancer as a business, like starting and launching my own business versus just being kind of like this, take these random jobs as they come and make $20 a pop. And so I started freelancing for a lot of brands and companies that she recommended to me. And then I wrote for a little bit for Entrepreneur. And I think my biggest client that was like my turning point was Founder. I don't know if you all have ever heard of that. It was like a job posting on like, I think it was like a copy blog or something I used to like poke around in when I was kind of in a lull for clients. And I just sent them an email and I was like, I want to write for you all. Here's a test piece, blah, blah, blah. So I was with them for like 6 months to a year, and they were the closest aligned to what I was really passionate about. And I got to write for them. And that's where HubSpot found me. So my hiring manager at the time, it was a LinkedIn message, and I thought it was spam. Like, I ignored it. I remember thinking, because, you get those like random hiring messages. Yeah. And Jamie at the time, she emailed me again. She's like, hey, I just want to make sure you got this. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was a real message. Me, like 22 years old, like professionals, all hell. So I ended up getting the job, and I started spring of 2018 with HubSpot. I really enjoyed my time there, kind of like how Alex said. My job like changed over time, but it was the first time I'd really like understood content as like a marketing function, understood its purpose in, campaigns and the entire funnel. And being a freelancer, there was a lot of autonomy, and I learned a lot kind of because I had to, every day was different. It was kind of just as fearful as it was exciting. So I'm grateful for that time. But until you really see content as like a piece of a larger puzzle and a larger like pie, do you really understand like its impact? And I didn't really get that perspective when I was a freelancer. So from HubSpot, I ended up working at a startup last year for about 6 to 7 months. It was all right. But it was also like one of the biggest, like most uncomfortable lessons I've ever learned. Like it was one of those things, like looking back, I don't know if I would do it again, but I know exactly why I did it. Connecting the dots backwards. And then I started at Shopify like 2 months ago. And at the agency, I don't know, when did y'all bring me on? Spring of 2019? It was before COVID.
Yeah, I think 2019.
Summer
We were working with you as a contractor. Like you were a writer.
We had a trip to Tahoe, I remember.
Yeah.
And then after that, we brought you on.
Yeah, I kept freelance clients on the side at HubSpot. And I was looking to expand my work. And I think at the time we were all kind of like, what else can we work on? Like, what other ways can we flex these muscles? And yeah, I came on as a writer and then head of content and then, partner.
We were blown away because we were working with Wonderkind at the time, and we were like, the quality of the deliverables you gave were just like, are you kidding? This is fucking amazing. So then we learned that you had like greater, aspirations with business building, and that was like, all right, we got to get Allie on board.
That's awesome. There's a great synergy between all of you too. It's like you all bring something unique to it. Okay. Oh, and I do want to mention Kaylee Moore was on our podcast, so I will link to that as well in case anybody wants to listen.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite humans.
Yeah. David,
Right.
you have a bachelor's in chemistry and also a background or a breakdance instructor. You were at one point.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into content marketing.
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry part is pretty straightforward. I didn't know what to major in either. I didn't know undecided was an option. I probably would have chosen that if I knew, but
Yeah.
I chose chemistry because that spoke to me the most. I had an honors and AP chemistry teacher, Mr. De La Losa, who was like, he was like the uncle who like set the standard for you, and you're like, I need to fucking meet that standard. And he really motivated all of us a lot. And so I was like, I like chemistry. I guess I'll do chemistry. And then I kind of just did the classes. I didn't take school very seriously. I thought it was easy, and so I didn't study. And so the trick questions on a test fucked me over. So, and I'd look back and I'd be like, oh yeah, I should have gotten that right. But I would get like a C in organic chemistry when I was like, wait, that was fucking easy. How'd I screw that up? And then I decided to take it more seriously. I don't regret doing chemistry. I got to take classes like quantum mechanics and thermodynamics and all of that, which were fascinating. There was one time we were in the middle of a quantum mechanics lecture, and there was like some research done where it was like they thought the researchers shot a particle that traveled faster than the speed of light, and we spent the whole lecture talking about how that would completely fuck over all our understanding of physics, which it wasn't replicated, fortunately, but it's fascinating that there are people thinking about that stuff. But in my senior year of school is when I started breaking out of the science and like breakdancing community and more into the business community. And I just thought that was fascinating. My favorite classes were always like literature and literary journalism. And so writing was something that I was really fascinated and interested in. And because I learned that business is pretty much writing and communication, I got drawn to that. And one of the more entrepreneurial things I did was there was this TED Talk called like Before I Die. And it was like, you put up this public wall that says like, before I die. And there are a bunch of lines where people get chalk and write what they want to do before they die. And I ended up rallying a bunch of friends together. We built this huge wall and we hoisted it up, and it went viral on campus, and we got like news reporters coming to see it. And I was like, this is cool. This is marketing. Like we somehow got some hype around this.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's another project I can do? And during finals week, I had a friend who, she didn't have finals. I forgot what her major was, but that's weird looking back. So she just like took coffee orders and delivered them to people, and like milk tea orders. And then the following quarter, I said, hey, her name was Cora. I was like, hey, Cora, are you going to do this again? And she said, no. And I said, well, I don't have any finals this quarter. Or like, I finished my finals on Monday. Like, I have 4 finals in one day. Can I take that over and like do some delivery? And she's like, yeah, why do you need to ask? And so I put up a Google form. I created like a Facebook event. I invited popular people I knew, and they like put in orders and then share with their friends. And then I was like literally in my college apartment, brewing coffee and tea and then making deliveries. And I was like, this is interesting that people trust me to do this. And then next quarter I did it again. And I like rallied together a group of friends and like had this whole operation, like assembly line going on. And I finished my chemistry degree, and I even tried to make it work, but I couldn't get any chemistry jobs. And I was like, fuck it. I guess I'm just going to apply for marketing jobs. And I was reading like Quick Sprout and Neil Patel's blog and all these other marketing blogs back then. And eventually got an SEO internship where I was doing like essentially backlinking. So that's why I know about like the scholarships and Gov and EDU backlinks. And I quit that job because I started doing cold calls. And then I got a job doing marketing for a restaurant company. And as I was doing all this, it was like, do the job, learn, and then go to a coffee shop and read and like learn how to do an SEO audit and technical audit and like do a technical audit for free and send it to this person or something, which is how I ended up getting on another person's radar. Contrary to Alex, I think I planned a bit more on my end. I was like, who do I want to work for? And I just researched a bunch of people on LinkedIn and cold messaged them. And then this guy named Eric Sue reached out, who's the founder of Single Grain, had coffee. And I guess I made an impression, followed up. And in my follow-up, I said, hey, I did a technical SEO audit. Here's my findings. And he got it. And he responded back. He said, this is great. Like, here's some feedback. Like, let me know what you do with it. And so I was like, oh, shit. Okay. And so I did a V2 of the audit and sent it back. And he was like, hey, we should talk. And he pretty much offered me a job.
Wow.
And I only worked for him for a couple of months, but it was enough time and exposure to someone who was further along in their career. He's like, I think 5 or 6 years older than us, but he was running a multi-million-dollar agency. He ran very successful marketing teams at like Treehouse. And he was like not that much older. So I and he was like Asian American. And so I kind of saw a role model in him. Didn't work out because he was figuring out like stuff with the business. I got laid off. But then I was like, okay, I think I learned enough to feel like I could work for a tech company. So I intentionally looked at tech companies. There was a career board called inbound.org at the time. So I applied for it. I forgot, I think I was reading blogs on how to apply for jobs and stand out. And it was like, you should email them and tweet them and stuff. And so I found a bunch of people I thought who could be the hiring managers and just LinkedIn message and tweeted at them. And then said I had submitted this application. One of them, Anam Hussein, got my tweet, responded to my tweet. And then she was like, I'll keep an eye out for your application. Did an interview over like 2 weeks. And they're like, hey, we want to offer you a job. Can you start? And then I moved to Boston. Later, I found out that Anam literally saw my tweet as she was getting on a flight. And so like when she landed, she saw my application and was like, I learned that she was actually about to offer another person a job, but my initiative like got my foot in the door. I was like, oh shit, like some stuff really is serendipitous. So I got really lucky. Yeah. And then HubSpot happened, and yeah.
How did HubSpot happen exactly?
I started off on a content team doing blogs and SEO, and then started doing partnerships like co-marketing. And from there, my role became really ambiguous because we were like a separate marketing team that got merged into their main marketing team. And they're like, we don't know what to do with you. And so I just sort of went and did some exploration and came back with a proposal to my VP at the time. And I was like, here's where I think I should spend my time. If you don't agree, let me know, but this is what I'm going to do. And then it was like, I was kind of going rogue on a lot of things and probably stepping on people's toes, which at HubSpot didn't rub people the right way. But I think for some people they were willing to work with a personality like mine because most people weren't doing that. And so got some stuff done, got some new strategies in place. And then eventually was like, I want to do product instead, because everything I want to do has to do with product management. And then kind of started building relationships and learning about that. And eventually started doing like growth marketing, which was more product-y. And as that got more successful, I eventually was able to just make the transition to the product team.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool. We all mentioned we have mentors that led us kind of down this path. We've all held personal blogs and like writing practices of our own to kind of like write about the things we were learning. And David, when you mentioned you were doing these like learning SEO audits and shit in coffee shops, I had this acute memory of me like being 23, 24 and like not really knowing what I wanted to do, but like every night sitting in a coffee shop and either reading, taking a course or writing. And it was just this always on hustle. Like I was so frenetic, like trying to figure out like what the pieces were.
Actually, when I was working at the restaurant company in LA, what I did is I woke up at like 6 a.m., went to a coffee shop. I was doing Noah Kagan's like first like path to 1K or something course, like how to get your first $1,000 as an entrepreneur. And I would go to my day job and then just sit there and do whatever they needed me to do. And I'd be the kid being like, you should do this and this and this, and I can do all of that. And they'd be like, we don't want to do that. We just want you to like make this social media stuff. I'm like, but you can do so much. And then after work, I'd go write for my blog or read. Yeah. Like Alex was saying, I don't know. It was fun. I kind of miss that. I think back to it every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I have a question for all of you. Well, a couple of questions actually. So I'll just go around. Alex, what's your biggest career regret?
I thought about this when you posed the question, and it's a hard question to answer because on one side, I don't have regrets, but that's because, like there's this belief in like cause and effect, and like I like where I'm at today, so it's hard to say that anything was a regret. But I think if I wistfully think back, like on some of the pitfalls that I had made, or if I had lived a different life, right? I don't know. Like I've through my entire career, I've been very anxious, and I was always wanting more and like the next thing, and I always felt like what I had wasn't enough, or I wasn't enough for that role. And I wasn't like a career hopper. I didn't do like 6-month, 1-year stints. Like there's people who really strategically do that because they want to go up as fast as they can. And I think what happens with those people is one of two things. One, probably more common, is they disappear and basically it wasn't for them, and they were trying to build the scaffolding on something that actually didn't exist for them. Like it was all purely status and anxiety based. And then the other one is somebody gets to a point where they actually reach a place of like dissatisfaction. And they're like, what the fuck am I doing? And then they find a place of comfort with where they're at, And I think that happens sometimes too. But I sometimes wonder, it's like in those moments where I felt some sense of dissatisfaction, like I wasn't growing enough. What if I had just like pushed down and like, been okay with being comfortable and, feeling safe? Like, I think I was always afraid of feeling safe in a role because early in my career, like I've talked to David about this before. It's a little weird to say, but I've always felt like I was going to get fired at any moment. Like, and that stopped a couple of years ago. I think I resolved enough, whatever tensions in myself to know that that's.
Yeah. Where does that stem from? Do you think?
Oh, we're going deep.
Yeah, you want to go
we don't have that much time, so.
I could talk to my therapist. It's a tough question and it's a valid one. But yeah, I felt like in environments where I felt like comfortable and safe, like that, it provoked me to want to run to the next thing. So sometimes I wonder like what would happen if during those periods, like maybe you stuck it out and like pushed on, like what would happen? Maybe there is a breakthrough that I missed, right? Like maybe that's something that I could have pushed onward for. Another regret, and it's not feasible, but I have always known that I wanted to start businesses. So like doing so late in my 20s feels later than I should have. And granted, I was doing freelancing, which is kind of like that. in my mind, like what I was actually wanting to do. But I had a ton of student debt, and like if I would have done it right out of college, like I maybe could have raised a bunch of money and done it that way, but it felt very precarious. So I think there are certain external circumstances that prevent people from following those things, even if you want to. But yeah, sometimes I wonder, like, what if I just, launched a startup when I was 22, 23 and like really pushed, for that home run? Like what would have happened then? But I think, feasibility wise, it makes sense why I didn't.
Yep, makes sense. What about you, Allie? What's your biggest career regret?
Well, I am the same as Alex, where I was driven a lot by anxiety, a lot of fear, which I think I've come to terms with more of that in recent years too, but you're not alone. There's a couple things. A lot of the things I regret are things I didn't do. One is I wish I had a different major. And I say all this with a grain of salt because obviously I probably wouldn't be here today if things happen as they did. But yeah, I wish I had either pursued English or journalism or just something just ridiculous, because they're just never going to be in that position again to just learn for the sake of it. And I freaking loved school. So I sometimes wish I had just, I don't know. Because again, it's not worth thinking about that really too much. But the other regret I have, and I guess it's like partially a regret and partially a lesson too, because I can change this today. Every single job I've had, including this agency, I've been basically recruited or invited to join, which is it's very like good for a personality like mine, because it's basically validation, right? Like, and sometimes I need that. But I haven't really pursued something and just been like, you should fucking hire me because I'm good at this XYZ. Or tried something like just for the sake of it. And again, like I'm only 27, so like I have time to do stuff like that. But I think back to like a lot of the hesitations and the things I sat on until I got this like external sense of like, hey, you should come here. Like the HubSpot role, I found that role months before Jamie reached out to me, and I was like, nah, I'm not good enough for this. Wow. I'm not going to be good enough till I'm like 50. Like, I don't know.
So as part of your growth, to be able to have that opportunity to actually seek something out and pursue it fully.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just building confidence, but I just had never, I don't know. I've always looked for that external validation, and it was the same with like I got a full ride to school, and that was why I chose the college that I did, and it's obviously paid dividends today. But I think about like, what if I just like took a risk and tried to go to my dream school? Because like I really had a couple other schools in mind, and again, wouldn't be sitting here without what happened. But I think it's been a good lesson for me for the next, I don't know, 50.
At least you're aware of it, you know?
Yeah. So in terms of regrets, like that's the only regret I have. Not because I wish I had done something different, but because I wish I had reached a point of confidence earlier in my career, because I think it would have helped soothe and like smooth a lot of things I've been through that probably weren't necessary to feel. But I mean, we are here today, so
it is what it is.
Yeah. But that's like a regret and a lesson that I have.
That's a good one.
I just wonder about that with the anxiety. And I wonder if like, it's like when a rich person gets really rich and says like, oh, I didn't need the money to make me happy. It's like, well, that's great that you can say that in your vantage point. Do you want to give it all up now? And they never do. So I do wonder sometimes, like, because I resonate and feel the same way. I'm like, did I need to be that anxious? Did I need to have that frenetic pace, that always grasping? And maybe the answer is no. And maybe I did just waste a lot of, mental.
Well, I think it's how our brains are wired. I mean, we don't have problems like finding food anymore or shelter. We have all of that. So our brain is always wired to look for new problems, which creates more anxiety. I think it's just how we are.
Well, the thing that makes me feel better is like we're relatively young, like sure, that might have been our main driver for the last decade or so, but it doesn't have to be for the next. And I think it's taught us, like, at least it's taught me a lot of important lessons. And so I don't harp on it too much mentally, because there's still like more to be done. But yeah, I think about that sometimes too. Like if I hadn't felt like I was on the cusp of failure every day, like would I be where I am today?
Yeah. So interesting.
I had something similar. I think, I don't know, 2015 to 2018, 19, I had these list of business ideas. I had kind of stopped and started a lot. Like I wanted to create a course. I wanted to create these templates. And I was always trying to fight the idea of doing a marketing agency because it didn't seem sexy. Like I wanted to eventually do like a software startup, but I was like, I don't have any ideas. I'm not an engineer. How do I do that? And I think part of it was confidence too, for sure. So part of me wishes there was less fear, but I kind of forgive myself for that because I mean, certain upbringings, particularly for me, it was like, don't take risks. Don't do that. That's not what you do type of thing that eventually I broke out of. So maybe the answer to that is like, I wish I got a therapist sooner.
Yes, that's the real answer from all of us.
I think we all agree.
If you take one thing away from this episode.
Yeah.
Therapy.
But I'll take it in a different direction. One thing I realized I did a lot when I was at HubSpot was I was looking like left and right a lot around what other people are doing. And I'd start working with these people who went to Harvard and Dartmouth and Yale and people who got MBAs. And I'm like, oh, I'm not as good as them. I didn't go to Harvard, or like, maybe I should get my MBA. And I studied for the GRE. I took the GRE, didn't score super well, but I felt like I was spending so much time comparing, like maybe using the wrong measuring stick, where like now I feel like I'm much more intentional with who I'm comparing myself to, and I'm going in a direction I want to go. But there was this word that I fell on that I'm going to share when I was super into philosophy, which is probably when I asked Alex if he believes in free will. But there's this word, I think a Greek word that's euthymia. And Seneca defines it as believing in yourself and trusting that you're on the right path and not being in doubt by following the myriad of footpaths of those wandering in every direction. And the moment I read that, I was like, fuck. Yep, I'm just going to trust I'm on the right fucking path. I'm going to stop comparing myself to other people who probably don't know what they're doing either. And just trust the process and have faith. And it sounds fluffy, but taking that approach has just made things much easier. Because instead of thinking about all the possible options in my life and like having anxiety about all the things I'm missing out on, I just feel much more focused on the thing I'm going for with this group particularly, and not worrying too much about what I'm missing out on. So I wish I got to that earlier. I felt like I wasted a lot of time and energy stressing out about grad school and all of that.
This is kind of related, but I listened to a podcast with Tim Ferriss recently that was an older episode that he did with Dr. Gabor Mate. And he talks about, mainly in the sense of relationships and childhood and stuff, everybody wants connection and everybody needs authenticity. And oftentimes, like, if you really crave connection, you will subdue your authenticity to get that. So like being surrounded by people that you want to connect with and like, level up and like be the type of person that they would want to connect with. If you choose an inauthentic route to that, it's kind of this Pyrrhic victory, right? Like you can win and you can win that game, but you get there and you're like, wait, this wasn't what I wanted in the first place. Yeah. So it takes a lot of like years and wisdom, I think, to learn that. And David, you just read Wanting on mimetic rivalry too. I'm sure that caused a lot of reflection.
That caused a lot of reflection. It talks about this idea of like we learn to know what to want by observing what other people around us want, which I think describes a lot of human nature and why we end up wanting things. And if we end up asking why we want something, the answer may not necessarily be straightforward, or it might make us realize we don't actually want it. So it's been helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Worse with social media and stuff too.
Yeah.
So we have about 6 minutes left. Let's go around and ask, what is your proudest achievement, Alex, in your career?
Proudest achievement is tough. I think I'm having the most fun doing the agency. It's hard to say that's an achievement because there's multiple parts of it, right? Like there's many achievements within it. And it's like maybe just like signing the LLC or something like that, right? Like just getting out the door and like doing it is pretty cool. Like in terms of my career though, like if you wanted like more of a tangible tactical answer, like when I was at HubSpot, like I was in a pretty vague, like open-ended role, and I was doing a lot of what David did, which is just kind of working on my own shit. And, like I was afforded a lot of autonomy, which was amazing. But I basically built this strategy called the surround sound. And it included trying to get on all of the pages that are ranking for a given keyword. And I started there was no tool to figure out like how much real estate you occupied on a given search page. So I'm like, I'm going to build that tool. And that's what I like doing, is just 0 to 1. Like, let's just build something to do this. So doing that for myself, like doing the code, like all of the coding, all of that stuff was fucking great. Like that felt so good to actually like build a product from scratch. And God bless Scott Tousley for like giving me the time and space to work on that. There's a lot of nights and weekends too, but a lot of resources and support there. That was really cool. I really enjoyed doing that.
Awesome. Allie?
I know in the future that this will be my proudest achievement, but kind of like what Alex said, it's like I'm in the middle of it now. Looking back, I think my proudest achievement was more of the decision to quit my job and start freelancing, because it was so out of character. And like at the time, I was 22, didn't have like a super expensive lifestyle. Like I didn't have any student debt. I was pretty much like kind of doing my own thing. And so it wasn't really like a big risk, but it went against every like bone in my body to do that. And I had a lot of pushback by pretty much everybody in my life. So it was an achievement in that, like, it was just a big deal that I did that. And I don't know why it hasn't carried into, I've almost like gone in the opposite direction mentally. So I need to like find my 22-year-old self again. But I think it also changed the course of my career, like hugely. And I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. I just knew I didn't like my job and just wanted to write and get paid for it.
So you took a risk.
Yeah. So it wasn't really an achievement in and of itself, but I felt like I achieved something by like kind of that risk and coloring outside the lines a little bit. So.
Yeah, makes sense. David, what about you?
It's not like career, but I think my doing the like college apartment coffee delivery service was a big turning point for me for a couple of reasons. Like I somehow just strategized my quote go to market by inviting the popular people I knew who I knew would share it with their friends, and get more people to like order drinks. It got me comfortable with like using spreadsheets and starting to do calculations and managing profit margins. It taught me that I can rally people together to work on this thing that I started. And for some reason, people want to work with me on stuff like that. That gave me some level of confidence.
It's validating.
Like not having much confidence growing up. And it taught me like I can do something without asking for permission where there's no playbook built out, which I haven't thought about this in a while, but it was like, no one gave me a playbook and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I kind of just jumped in and did it and built the process as I went and got people involved, and it was fun. And I think now I'll just like reflect on that and be like, whenever I'm scared of something, just be like, wait, of course you don't not going to know what the next step is, but just jump in. I think it's a good reminder. Maybe the naivete, I think is how you pronounce it. Like me being naive at that age is what allowed me to do that. But reminding myself that sometimes it's okay to be naive and just jump in.
Yeah, for sure.
I do think to both of your points, like I sometimes look back and I miss like the spunk that I had in my early 20s, like the flair and the boldness. And it's like, if I could recapture that and blend it with like kind of the calm and wisdom of today, like that's 100%. The ideal balance, right? Like if you're too far on one side, you're kind of out of whack.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right. I do want to ask this one last question because I'm curious to hear your answers. Let's imagine you're well into your 80s and you look back, and this doesn't have to just be career related, but life related. What do you want your legacy to be? Alex.
You'll just start with me.
I'll jump in if you don't have an answer. All right, I'll go.
Terrifying question.
So back in college, me and one of my best friends, Justin, like, I don't know what, we weren't on drugs, but we were talking about this idea of like, yeah, it's fucking annoying how people feel like there's this certain measure of success that everyone's supposed to be measured by. And so we started having this mantra of like, you got to go for like define your own success and like live up to your own potential. And I still think about that a lot. Like the idea of living up to your potential. And maybe that's why I always feel like there's more to do, because I feel like I'm never at that. And I think there's more room to grow. But something I've evolved over time to want is this idea of helping others use work as a medium for personal growth. And I think of it because I think through work, I was able to learn a lot about myself and how I think, and develop like my intellectual curiosities. And I'd love to help someone who is interested in those things use Omniscient as a training grounds to develop and like become much smarter than they thought they could be, and work on projects that they never thought they'd be able to work on, and like make a living out of doing that and have fun doing it. If we like work can build out a business that lets people join our universe and like have fun and grow as a person while making money, I'd be really happy. If I was on my deathbed. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
The way you said that, it's funny.
There's like this intellectual idea that I keep coming to, which is like the Stoic belief that like a legacy is sort of like you shouldn't worry too much about your legacy, because, you know, think back, like, do you know your great grandparents' names? Like, I don't. So it's like, you're probably not going to be remembered. So one part of me is thinking like, I don't care a ton about legacy, but I'm also lying a little bit because I do. So I want to not care about legacy, but I think in the near term, like the mission really is to, you know, build, and facilitate connection and a great life for like my tribe, community, family, people in my close vicinity, and like make their lives better and hopefully make some positive mark on the world. Right. And I think I can do that through business. So I think that's a great vehicle. And David, I loved your response on giving people also the tools and the vehicle for personal growth through work. So I think that's actually a great legacy. But I look at it on like individual touch points. It's not like this grand, like I don't have a grand legacy of like, you know, getting us to colonate Mars or something like that. Like it's more so like who are the people in my life that I care about, and like what are the issues that I care about, and how can I make my small mark in a positive direction on those things. It's like kind of controlling what I have the power to control.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Allie?
Oh man. Well, in my small circle, I definitely want to create a life where I can be present for my family. You know, as a woman, it's definitely a different trajectory that you're just subjected to. And I don't know what the future holds for me in that respect, but I do love how much like my mom was present because of the career that she built for herself. So in like my small realm, I would love to have that same presence, because I don't think I'll ever stop working just because I like love this stuff so much, but I don't want it to have to be a choice. And honestly, like, I don't think I'll ever be the kind of person that needs like a stage. Like I don't always love being the center of attention or needing people to hear my voice, but I've always wanted to be an author. Like I have a couple like rough drafts for novels on my computer, like things that I don't have the courage yet to pursue, but I would love to make an impact through that. So I hope one day like I can have the time and the space to splinter off a different kind of career in that respect. The different ways I want to impact people is TBD. I have a couple things I'd love to help amplify, issues and things like that. But mostly like what I think about is just creating a lifestyle where there's a lot of choice for me. And I
can relate to that as a woman.
Yeah. I mean, I know it affects everybody. But I think especially as a girl, you usually have to have a turning point where you go one direction or another. And I don't want that. So
yeah,
being omniscient can be one way. I don't have to choose.
The book thing is fascinating because someone once told me it's like the feeling that I've gotten from certain pieces of literature. If I could make one person feel that would be worth all the effort to write the book.
Yeah,
and it's like a very interesting way to put it.
I have a pen name and everything. Like I have no interest in being like, you know what I'm saying? It's not about that. Like it's a legacy tied to me. It's more of like I have things I want people to feel, things I'm figuring out myself that I'd love to help people process too. And I don't know, it's a whole other thing for me. Like I don't really go there a lot because I don't really know what it's going to look like, but it's a goal of mine make it part of my career one day.
I love that.
We got deep, you guys.
Yeah, we gotta do more podcasts like this. This is the best podcast I think we've done.
I know.
It's
I
super
learned
interesting.
a shitload about you guys.
I love the philosophical stuff, it just really
LDR, get a therapist dinner. Thank you, Philip.
yeah.
No fear. Trust your path and process. Yeah, I think that's the takeaway.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and being vulnerable and open about just reflecting back on your career and life and where you're headed. I think it's really, really amazing.
Yeah, thanks for organizing this one and giving the good questions. Those really made me think.
Good. I have more where those came from.